Hey, everybody. Tina-Desiree Berg here, reporting for Status Coup News. It's Friday, August 11th, and because it's Friday, that means it's time for some right-wing insanity report. How's everybody doing this afternoon? We've been having really hot weather here in Los Angeles. It's humid. So just kind of staying hot here in the studio. I have a very special guest today. So this week is the 6th-year, believe it or not, anniversary of Charlottesville. So we're going to talk about that and a handful of other things that are going on. So welcome to the show, friend of the show, Daryle Lamont Jenkins. You've met Dale before on the show. You've seen his work elsewhere. He's with One People's Project. He's been keeping tabs on white supremacists now for well over a decade. Probably 2 decades, actually. So welcome, Daryle. How are you doing there on the East Coast?
3 decades. 3.
3 decades. There you go.
Since 1987.
1987. That is, okay, just true story. That is the year I graduated from high school. 87 was a good year.
Yep, there it is. There's that gray hair that just popped in. Thank you.
Well, normally I feel like I'm the older person on the show. So for once,
no, not anymore.
Not
I just turned 55 about 2 weeks ago. So
I'm right behind you. I'm close.
Not if you graduated in 87.
I was young when I graduated. I was one of those weirdos.
Oh, no, time out. You graduated in 87?
From high school, yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm cool.
Not college.
I'm cool.
You're cool.
Okay, yeah, it fell out. Because I graduated in 86.
Ah, okay. 1 year.
I graduated in 86. So, I was a young one when I started this anti-fascist biz.
Which is good. And here we still are with white supremacists surrounding us. I wanted to start the show talking about, though, one thing. Andy Ngo this week, he lost his lawsuit against Rose City and Antifa. So he was suing them for a whole bunch of things, basically placing blame for the assault that happened against him at a protest. The previous week, he had been with other right-wing extremists, Joey Gibson, others from Patriot Prayer. Sorry, couldn't get that out.
Prayer, yeah.
And they had been planning an assault against some activists. They showed up at Cider Riot, which is the name of a pub there in Portland, and mayhem ensued. One of the right-wingers hit a girl on the back and broke her vertebrae. So it was a bad situation. Clavicle. Thank you. Clavicle. Okay. So what are your thoughts on this? I think we should just mention this because this is kind of a big deal that Andy Ngo lost.
Well, but to be perfectly honest with you, it's actually a good thing that he filed this lawsuit. No one thought that he was going to win it, but he lives for the grift, unfortunately, and it helped us reinforce that.
Yeah.
And because when you take a look at what Andy Ngo's doing, he doesn't do anything based on facts, really.
No.
When you talk about his little lawsuit with Rose City Antifa, the judge took them off I think it was the judge that took Rose City Antifa off the case.
Originally, you're right. Originally, he had named, it ended up being against, I believe, 5 defendants, but originally he had literally named Rose City Antifa and then also 50 John Doe anti-fascist members, like whatever that means. So you're correct.
Yeah, I mean, truly. I mean, it's like there's no sense in even trying to take Andy Ngo seriously, but he gives people he gives the right a lot of something to talk about, make him sound like relevant. It goes back to what I was talking about, this guy who pretends to be Antifa, who says that he is writing books based on his time in Antifa, and there's actually nothing in it to be real.
Right.
So it's like, and then you look and find out he's working with groups like the Leadership Institute and stuff. It's like, okay, really? You're working with the group that actually gave us the alt-right. Okay, right. Thank you, chump.
Exactly. So it's all a big grip. These guys actually fundraise off it. You know, what makes Andy Ngo particularly dangerous, though, as far as I'm concerned, is that some people view him as a legitimate journalist, even though he's been caught lying and telling half-truths a million times over.
Well, that's always what's going to make any of these clowns dangerous. I mean, truth be told, that was the reason why it was really important for him to file this lawsuit. And people can see that he lost.
Yeah.
People can see that he really didn't have a leg to stand on. If he did, he would have gotten those people he accused arrested.
Right.
Arrested. That didn't happen. I had an argument with some clown on Twitter the other day about. It said, so what you're trying to tell me is that the police responded to a guy who was beaten up by people they hate and was chased into a hotel with those people apparently threatening him from outside, and the police was just like, it's not big enough for us to care about.
Right.
You're going to make that argument? That's just as stupid as trying to say that Patriot Front is FBI.
Right.
Yes, I'm reading the comments.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Well, speaking of Patriot Front, they just filed a lawsuit this week against an anti-fascist researcher that infiltrated their group and is responsible for the Unicorn Riot leaks of their rocket chat and some other files. So basically, they're trying to make the case that he garnered his way into their organization based on lies, i.e. saying, I'm one of you, I'm a Nazi like you, I share your beliefs. They let him in, they gave him membership, access to their computer. I don't think this case is going to go anywhere personally because... Anyway, but they did file it, and they use their actual names. I also want to mention the attorney that is handling the Patriot Front case, I think might have a personal axe to grind, because basically he sued the Southern Poverty Law Center for something similar. If you think way back, he had been an attorney in Baltimore, defending the city of Baltimore Police Department, believe it or not, in some cases, when it came out that he was a Nazi. So he turned around and sued the Southern Poverty Law Center. The judge dismissed the case because there was no merit to it. But, here's a guy that is if you read the opening of the lawsuit, he's going on and on about First Amendment rights. And, I'm reading this and I'm saying, the First Amendment is a pact between you and the government, not between two individual parties. I'm not sure how you can make the case as these Patriot Front members are losing any sort of First Amendment rights. But we'll see where that goes, I guess.
Well, honestly, I mean, let's be fair. We do look at First Amendment rights as being a thing where everyone is allowed to say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it.
Without consequence.
Well, I'm not going to say without consequence, because...
but they want that. That's exactly what they want, right, Daryle? Yeah.
They want that. The problem is, whether or not you're the government, you're supposed to be respecting the free speech of others. Having said that, that means they're going to have to respect ours.
Right.
And there is no way that they can win this case. No legal scholar is looking at this case saying that they have a leg to stand on whatsoever. Plus, were they to prevail, you're talking about a lot of things crumbling. Never mind, Antifa won't be able to dox them or anything like that. You're talking about things ranging from newspapers, media, to their so-called citizen journalists like James O'Keefe, to whistleblowers. No one will be able to tell anything about anyone that they find out about. So you can't tell because they deem it to be private. If it is something that leaks, that's the way it goes. Ironically, the only people that can get away with that kind of crap is the government. You can't tell national security secrets. That's right.
You're not wrong. James O'Keefe used some of the same tactics to infiltrate groups, right?
So everything will fall apart. Everything will fall apart. They will actually stifle free speech with their lawsuit, and there is no way in hell there'll be that's going to be allowed.
Well, free speech is for me, but not for thee. That's how these guys see that.
No, it'll be taken away from them too. They just don't see it.
They don't see it. That's exactly right. I agree with you there.
That's just the way it goes. We'll be some suing MFs if we was to if they were to prevail, because we just go buck wild going after all of these clowns, and then it'll just be a back and forth, and then somebody's going to have to pass some legislation saying, okay, knock it off or whatever. But by that time, the damage will be done. No one's playing this game. But the political climate being as it is, I guess I should say that if somebody does play this game, we're all going to lose it. In many respects, we're going to lose it more than the folks in Montgomery on them knuckleheads who thought they can try it in a small town.
Right. Free speech is for everybody, right? So either you accept the people you disagree with or you don't. But they don't want the consequences of their hateful, behavior, their hateful thoughts, the things they do. They just don't want there to be consequences for that. That's what's at base.
No, they don't.
So I want to shift gears. I was actually going to talk about this at the start of the show, but because these two things were pending, I did want to make sure we got them into the show today. So Marjorie Taylor Green, I want to talk about her for a second. She seemed to be agreeing with some guy that was talking about treason in an audience and deciding that Democrats need to, be executed for being Democrats because they're just treasonous. It's some crazy stuff. I want to play this video clip and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
And I want to, yes, sir. I'll go do one more. Yes, sir.
What is the penalty for treason? Okay, we know treason has been deleted, and nobody having an answer for it. Something has got to be done. It's treason. Our country, our Constitution has been stomped under the feet.
Yep.
It's written according to the Bible. Like you said, we got to get prayers for the country. And we got people got to be tried for treason.
And death penalty. Well, I think we're ending on a right note. Listen, thank you guys for sticking around. I appreciate you coming. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So basically, he's saying they should be tried for treason because of all these terrible things that they're doing. And then somebody chimes in, yes, give them the death penalty. And Marjorie Taylor Green is like, yeah, sounds like a plan to me. Great note. Yay.
Yeah, but compared to other things that Marjorie Taylor Green has said in the past, this is tame.
That's fair.
That really, if you're going to go after her for this, why don't we just go after her for openly declaring that we need to have a national divorce, aka secession? I mean, right. She is a sitting member of Congress, and she is calling for the dismantling of the United States, which she took an oath to uphold and defend. If you're not getting rid of her for that, then you're definitely not going to get rid of her for really not actually saying that it's okay to kill the president. Right. She didn't really say it, but here's my thing about it. If we are, Marjorie Taylor Green has said a lot of things and been about a lot of things that makes us all wonder, really, why is she still there? Why are we always waiting for her constituents to vote her out when they obviously don't want to do that? Why do we have to keep playing this game year after year with a woman who has done nothing but say provocative things, but hasn't done anything?
Right.
Really hasn't done anything. Really hasn't put in any work when she was while she's been in Congress these past 2 or 3 years. Right. There is a point where you listen to Democrats ratcheting it up the whole trying to shame people into voting for them next year.
Right. There's that too.
All the things that they should have been doing that they said they were going to do, but all they do is give us excuses as why they can't do anything. It was, we don't have we don't have control of the House right now. We have control of the Senate, but we have 2 senators on the Democratic side that are
voting with the Republicans.
Up the works. Yeah. You need to vote for us more so that we continue to continue to lie. I mean, continue to not do something because there'll be some other reason why. We have to come to a point where we always said we were going to put the Democrats' feet to the fire. We always said we're going to put those we elect to the fire, their feet to the fire. And if you're not stopping people who are openly calling from secession from being elected officials, you're not good enough to do the job. You're not the persons we need for the job. So if somebody goes third party on your ass, that's the way it goes. We want people who are going to do the job. There actually is no excuse for Marjorie Taylor Green to be in office. If they can expel the Tennessee 3 or actually in Tennessee for actually promoting free speech in a state that doesn't like it when we use it, then most certainly Joe Biden has all the power in the world to start removing people who are threatening our society, threatening our
You're not wrong. I mean, the impeachment still exists, but they never seem to use it. You're right. So the Democrats don't have a backbone, but they're going to complain. You're right. If people start voting for Dr. Cornel West, for example, they're going to vote shame people for that. Although,
I'm just saying, bottom line is whomever we vote for. I mean, whether it's Cornel West or just some cat who makes $40,000 a year. If we can find people who can do better, who we feel we can do better, we need to vote for them, you know, regardless of whether or not the Democrats like it. If the Democrats aren't going to put in the work, remove them and find somebody who does. And then there's also the fact that you do have Democrats that are probably trying to put in the work, but that upper hierarchy keeps on trying to slam them back down.
Right.
So the only other thing that we have to look at is that we have a corrupt political system. So we also have to build things that are outside the political system. We have to build new institutions. We have to build the institutions that respond to what it is we are concerned about. And in the case of Marjorie Taylor Green, unfortunately, it's in that area. But there's other things. There's other things that we can work on. We can make sure that we have proper education when the Democrats are too scared to keep libraries from staying open.
Right. There's another thing. Where's the pushback against all of the, banning of books and whatnot?
How in the world does anyone? We get lectured all the time about defending free speech. We're having a conversation about that now. Right. The one thing that we always look towards as, I guess, a barometer as to where a free society is whether or not we don't ban or burn books, and we are letting that happen.
Right. From people that say they're free speech absolutists on top of it, right? DeSantis is like, I'm my freedom. I'm all about the First Amendment and free speech. Yet here he is banning a ton of books.
Well, let's be honest. Let's be honest. More often than not, those who call themselves champions of free speech and are basically activists for free speech are not exactly activists for free speech. They're activists for a right wing. Right. They're activists for a right wing that wants to try to use their freedom of speech to undermine ours. When we try to use ours, they'll have every excuse in the world why we shouldn't, or they'll just simply try to keep us from being heard.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
I mean, Bill Maher calls himself a champion for free speech. That's why he had Miley Yiannopoulos on his show. He's never had Colin Kaepernick on his show.
Right.
He made and I don't know if we talked about this before, but the aforementioned Tennessee 3, he went the route of he first didn't mention it in his main show when that issue was
happened. Yeah.
But he talked about it on his overtime show that you can still see on YouTube. And what did he do? Say they didn't follow the rules. Oh. That is always the thing that says, no, you're not actually defending free speech.
No,
and he would talk about how the guy, and I hate Bill Maher basically, but we would talk about, he would defend the guy from Mumford & Sons who got called out for promoting Andy Ngo's book and said that we are in a country where we can read whatever the bleep we want. But you would think he would then transfer that to the conservatives who are out there banning books and start slamming them as well. Didn't even talk about it. Didn't even mention them.
No, I know. It's crazy, right? I'm not a fan of Bill Maher. I feel you there. He's very
and it's a heartbreak sometimes because a lot of people thought that he was on the right side of things, but no, he's a libertarian, and libertarians have a habit of breaking your heart.
Yeah.
Because they're liars about it.
It's true. Every now and then they do or say something that's great, but a broken clock's right twice a day.
Yeah, it's always a broken clock thing.
Exactly, right. I wanted to talk about a guy that has been making headlines this week. Richard Hanania. I can't never pronounce his name correctly. So he has a book deal with HarperCollins that's supposed to be coming out on woke culture, whatnot. He's been promoted by the founder of Substack as being an intellectual. He has been garnering followers all over Twitter. I thought that he's had some incredibly racist tweets. But, people sort of had defended him as being like an edgelord previous to now. But now it's come out. I want to pull this up. Huffington Post, Christopher Mathias, that covers right-wing extremism and the right for Huffington Post did this fantastic expose on him this week. He basically figured out that he had some alt accounts that he had been doing pen writing under on literal neo-Nazi websites, the Occidental Observer, Stormfront, like a bunch of them. Is insane. So I'm not sure if the book deal has gone away. I do know that the Substack guys have been defending him. And, he's come out now and said, I went through this extremist phase. That's not who I am anymore. I don't buy it based on his still very racist viewpoints. He's been putting forth white genocide as a thing. Obviously, cultural Marxism and this sort of thing. It's the typical race realism, the typical things you see from soft shoe neo-Nazis. I do want to go through some of this article and get your commentary on some of this, though. He is also promoted and loved by a lot of the ANCAPs in Silicon Valley, right? So Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, of course, is a big fan and whatnot. So he definitely has a platform and a voice. We'll see if he gets taken down from this. But okay, so a prominent conservative rioter lionized by Silicon Valley billionaires and a U.S. senator used a pen name for years to write for white supremacist publications and has a formative voice during the rise of the racist alt-right, according to a new HuffPost investigation. Richard Hanania, a visiting scholar of the University of Texas, used the pen name Richard Host in the 2010s to write articles where he identified himself as a race realist. So just really quickly, I just want to say race realists, these are guys that think biodeterminism is a real thing, meaning that IQ is hardwired to your race, just to give some background on that. He expressed support for eugenics and the forced sterilization of low IQ people, who he argued were most often Black. He opposed miscegenation and race mixing. That means, different people from different races getting together and having babies, God forbid. And once in a while, arguing that Black people cannot govern themselves. He cited the neo-Nazi author of the Turner Diaries, the infamous novel that celebrates a future race war. The Turner Diaries is what Timothy McVeigh was handing out down in Waco, Texas, before he did the bombing. It's also where the meme about Day of the Rope comes from. At the end of the book, you basically have a Day of the Rope where you hang everybody that's not part of the white nationalist, Aryan race. A decade later, writing under his real name, Hanania has ensconced himself in the national mainstream media, writing op-eds in the country's biggest papers, bending the ears of some of the world's wealthiest men, and lecturing at prestigious universities, all while keeping his past white supremacist writings under wrap. HuffPost connected Hanania to his Richard Host persona by analyzing leaked data from an online comment hosting service that showed him using 3 of his email addresses to create usernames on a white supremacist site. A racist blog maintained by Host was also registered to an address in Hanania's hometown, and HuffPost found biographical information shared by Host that aligned with Hanania's own life. Let me scroll down here for a second. Hanania did not respond to multiple requests for comment on the story made via phone, email, and direct messages on social media. On Sundays, 2 days after the story was published, he posted an essay to Substack confirming HuffPost reporting. Recently, it's been revealed that over a decade ago, I held many beliefs that, as my current writing makes clear, I now find repulsive. No, Richard. Your current writing does not make it clear that you find those beliefs repulsive whatsoever. They just, exactly, they're just more softer, changed to softer dialogue. But his viewpoint's pretty clear. The 37-year-old has been published by, wait for it, this is where it gets insane, the New York Times and the Washington Post. I kid you not. He delivered a lecture to the Yale Federalist Society and was interviewed by the Harvard College Economics Review. He appeared twice on Tucker Carlson Tonight, of course, Fox News former primetime juggernaut. He was a recent guest on a podcast hosted by the chief writing officer of Substack, the $650 million publishing platform, where Hanania has nearly 20,000 subscribers. Daryle, what is your take on this? This is a crazy story.
Like I said before, I mean, we have a really the political climate that is such that people like Hanania is allowed in. So, yeah. I mean, shout out to Christopher Mathias because 6 years ago, guess where we were at this weekend. And he definitely does a hell of a lot of good work exposing a lot of these scumbags. And it's really important. Reporters like him are damned important. But having said that, there's also the matter of we know that these guys are really hiding in plain sight in many respects.
Yeah.
And it comes to a point where what are we going to do about it? And I think it all goes back to going after not only those characters, because they do need to get bounced out of any kind of respectable platforms.
Right.
But also we got to start asking people, why are you supporting them? We got to start calling out their supporters, because I can understand it if you didn't know what he was about, but even in the stuff that he was writing under the pen name, writing in the mainstream, it was obvious what he was about.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was.
We shouldn't have to be like jumping through hoops to prove that somebody is racist when the person is actually just telling us anyway. I mean, that brings incidentally, that brings me to Barry Weiss, another one of those free speech fighters. I mean, who aren't really about free speech, but about pushing racist ideas. You know, she was she invited him as a speaker for the University of Austin.
Not surprised by that.
And she wrote this. I'm looking at this right now. She wrote, Richard Hanania has no affiliation with UATX. He was invited once as a speaker. Like many other institutions, we were completely unaware of his pseudonymous racist writings. Had we known, we would not have invited him. A spokesperson, Hello Ofik, told Semaphore, which is the where I got this from. Had you known, you guys are out there trying to defend like the woman who, remember the woman in Central Park who tried to accuse a black man for her name is Casey Cooper, I believe.
Yeah,
she has a whole video trying to defend her. You know, I mean, she defends these idiots all the time.
Yeah, Barry Weiss is a mess. I just said
Barry
that,
Weiss is a complete mess, and this is the perfect example of that. Because quite frankly, yes, you would have invited him if you knew that. Because that's your kind of thing, where you say you're inviting them in the name of allowing diverse views to be expressed.
Right. It's just the marketplace of ideas. We're just asking questions.
But when they get in trouble, when it's embarrassing, it's all stuff, we would have never invited them. Well, why not? I mean, nothing ever stopped you before.
Right. I mean, if you go through his
now.
Exactly. If you go through his recent Twitter history, I'm talking the last 2 years, you'll see plenty of tweets where he argues for race realist ideas, right? Where he also argues that crime rates are supportive of jailing more black folks versus white folks. Like dripping with racism. Anybody with any sort of amount of respectability, if they read that, should not be saying, yeah, let's put this guy in the New York Times. I mean, this is an affront to the New York Times. But then again, look at the New York Times lately. They've been doing a lot of this sort of thing. I think it's crazy.
And I will say now, could I say something? Because I'm looking
100%.
I'm looking at the comments, and I want to respond to Nadia Yvette Chambers, that says, what can we do about it? The ones with all the money and all the power are behind them. 100 billion of us wouldn't be enough to make a difference in the face of that. Wrong answer. Because they don't have all the money. And two, they also don't have all the momentum. People are going to do something about it. Definitely 100 billion people. We know how to handle this. You're talking about them having all the money. Stop giving them the money.
Right.
They get their money from us. You know, they're not. I mean, not all of them are born with a silver spoon in their mouth. Elon Musk got his. Look at how Elon Musk got his money. Yes, he grew up with it. Yes. Stop buying Teslas, or stop whenever you see a Tesla in the street. I mean, come on. I know some progressive people who have Teslas.
I do too.
It's that simple. I mean, so if we stop giving, I mean, the Koch brothers even. I mean, look at all the things that they have. Why do you need Spotify? Why do you need Amazon? You know, why do you need PayPal isn't owned by Peter Thiel anymore, but still.
Not anymore, but still. I mean, Peter Thiel, I think, has given this guy a bunch of money too. You know, Peter Thiel's kind of a mess. Yeah,
Peter Thiel has been a mess for a very long time. No one, I mean, I can guarantee I have absolutely no money, but that doesn't mean that I have not been effective.
Right.
If I had more people behind me, that would make all the difference. If I had that 100 billion people working with me in this office, well, it'd be a pretty crowded office, but still, nothing they do can stop us from stopping them. Nothing. No matter how much money. It's so funny because it goes back to that whole Godfather 2 line when he was watching the Cuban Revolution going down when what is this? And Michael Corleone saw that Cuban Revolution going on, and he was looking at how the ruling class was pretty much defended by mercenaries and such, and a paid army, and the people in the street they were fighting were folks that just simply felt they had to fight them. And what did that mean to Michael Corleone? They would win. Yes, it's a movie, but yes, it's true. Keep that in.
That's true. I mean,
your mind.
It's the idea that there's the 99%, right? That still holds true, but it's going to take a monumental amount of effort to get everybody together on the same page. But once that happens, I do think people would be unstoppable. I think that's definitely true.
Yeah, and to Freedom House's 1984 comment about how they need Amazon because otherwise my business shuts down. It would be the equivalent of saying, why do you need YouTube? You don't need YouTube. Create new platforms. You don't need Amazon. Sometimes you can go straight to the business itself and purchase things, and listen, my movie Skin is on Amazon Prime. I mean,
hang on, I highly recommend that movie. I watched it. It was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also one of the few places you can go and see it. You can also see it on YouTube. But the thing is, we can create new platforms. We're learning how to do that after what Elon Musk is doing to Twitter. So the internet is a vast realm of opportunity for all of us. We just gotta put our time and effort in.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily make money. It doesn't actually cost money to be the biggest thing on the planet. Right. Believe it or not.
No, I think that's definitely true. I wanted to look at some of his old tweets, like some of the people that they have embedded in this article. Can we go back to the article 1 second?
Yeah, go back. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I want to go. Where did we pick up off? We don't need to read all that middle. It's a very, very long article. I recommend folks go and take a whole look at this thing when it's. Oh, all right. So halfway about down, Haas said he would be rooting for Palin. Let's pick it up there. Haas said he would be rooting for Palin in 2012 election just so I can watch liberals' heads explode after the goddess of implicit whiteness beats then President Barack Obama. If it's going to be a long time until we have a white awakening, we may as well be entertained while we wait. According to Haas' collected writings at the time, it appears that a white awakening, he was referring to a realization by whites in mass that they are superior to non-whites and that they'd be better off abandoning multiracial democracy for something resembling a whites-only ethno-state. Haas' arguments for a whiter America and Europe most often relied on the false claim that white people possess a superior intelligence. While an increasing Muslim underclass might not inspire as much bad art, the IQ and genetic differences between them and Native Europeans are real, and assimilation is impossible, he wrote in a 2009 piece for the Occidental Observer. I want to talk about this for a second, Daryle. Some people know this, some people don't. I did my master's thesis on against race realism, against race science. This is like in 2009. This is pardon my French, but this is fucking inexcusable from a scientific.
On the show. Okay,
from a scientific, yes, we could totally cuss on this show. 2009, we have already decoded the human genome. We know that there's no salient differences. We're all the same. The 15% admixture is based on isolated breeding populations, which have absolutely nothing to do with race. These are just scientific facts. So any of these guys still barking about, and especially if they work in academics, barking about race realism in 2009, pardon me, I'm getting so angry, I'm getting the frog in my throat. You're basically showing the world that you're ignorant.
Yes, they are.
And there is no genetic structure that would kind of tie together intellect with phenotypical superficial traits like skin color. It just doesn't exist. This is a stupid fucking argument. And anybody that has an interest, I will want to give a shout out to Stephen J. Gould, who wrote this great book back in 1996, Against Biodeterminism. It's an older book before we decoded the genome, but it's a beautiful book. Pick it up. It's called The Mismeasure of Man. But I can't understand why in 2009, somebody in any sort of an intellectual circle would be respected for making these arguments. They're just dead in the water.
I understand that. But the thing is, before you start trying to debate them on the merits of that of their arguments, you have to ask yourself if there really are merits to that argument.
No, there are none.
I mean, remember that a lot of whenever you start hearing people talk about eugenics and stuff, there's no scientific basis on that.
No.
And I mean, it really ultimately amounts to a bunch of people trying to maintain their political hold on a certain segment of society. That's the only reason why eugenics exists, which sucks because I find out that Nikola Tesla was a proponent of eugenics, and he's one of my heroes until you read that crap, and it's like, oh man,
right. It's really disappointing how many philosophers.
I worked in Broadway, New Jersey, where he had his lab, and
okay, I didn't know that.
There's a bus dedicated to him, and you find that out about him. It's like, come on, Tesla, you're one of the smartest people on the planet, or we're one of the smartest people on the planet. I would think you would know better than to fall into that crap, but you would think it is what it is.
They never do. Like, I mean, there's so many philosophers. Like David Hume would be a prime example, right? I mean, he's the father of empiricism, and yet he made these ridiculous arguments as well. Like every now and then, you're just like, oh, okay, they contributed something great to society, but they were bad people. Maybe sometimes we have to.
Hey, nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect, but damn, it's still disappointing.
What you can get out of it and leave the rest there. That's all you can do.
Exactly. Hispanic people, he wrote in a 2010 article in Countercurrents. This is also sort of a neo-Nazi adjacent publication. Don't have the requisite IQ to be productive part of a first world nation. Are you kidding me right now? He then made an argument for ethnic cleansing, writing that the ultimate goal should be to get all of the post-1965 non-white migrants from Latin America to leave. This is straight out of John Tanton, as far as I'm concerned. If we want to defend our liberty and property, a low IQ group of a different race sharing the same land is a permanent antagonist, he wrote. So, I mean, we get the point here.
Got to talk about that right there. That line right there was important, because while we're sitting up here being shocked at the at that kind of language, that used to be mainstream conservatism.
I know, which is scary.
And technically it still is, as we can tell from this character. But it reminded me of the fact that there used to be a guy out there named Russell Kirk. If you want to know where conservatism was in the 50s and 60s, you go to who was a part of National Review when they started that magazine. For those that don't know, the National Review was the conservative magazine of note that was founded by William F. Buckley. One of the writers, one of the founding writers of that magazine was a dude named Russell Kirk. And Russell Kirk, much like everybody else at the National Review, was very much so against integration, Southern integration. And he was concerned about integration in the South, especially voting rights in the South, for example. But he was especially concerned about voting rights in South Africa for Black people. And he pretty much used what Hania paraphrased in his little article about how this low IQ group, he didn't say low IQ, but he said it could mean the end of civilization, what have you. But he kind of because when I read it, it was pretty much, okay, that's what Russell Kirk said. And the reason why I bring up Russell Kirk is because at the Moms for Liberty conference back in June, the head of the Heritage Foundation was promoting a book that Russell Kirk wrote.
Jesus.
And it was called The Roots of the American Order. And this thing was when he brought up Russell Kirk in the first place, I was like,
Wow.
oh no.
Wow. Yeah. No, they keep like trying to revive these old race realists from like, next they're going to be measuring skulls for fuck's sake. I mean, it's just like, my God.
They're close to it. I mean, when you talk about
like I'm making a joke, but you're right. They're close to
Jared
it.
Taylor bases his ideas of eugenics on skull size. He's done that. Jared Taylor, the editor of American Renaissance.
Right, which we're going to talk about next because he's having his conference this weekend. These guys are just, I mean,
Sixth anniversary of Charlottesville, and they decide to hold a conference
the same weekend.
Which is curious because
that is curious.
2 weeks before Charlottesville, their organizers were at that conference promoting it. It's actually and actually because I was talking about Alt-Right Age of Rage, the documentary that I'm in.
Also a good one. I highly recommend for folks if they haven't seen it.
Yes. And in it, you'll see that particular conference, and you see Richard Spencer hyping up the Charlottesville rally 2 weeks before Charlottesville happened. This is the kind of element that you're going to see at American Renaissance. You don't see a lot of opposition, unfortunately, because they pretty much found themselves a safe space. But that's got to change at some point. There will be opposition there this year.
Good. Last year was a small group, right?
Last time it was a small group of us versus a small group of Proud Boys who had never been at this conference.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And,
that's right. They were there in the Tennessee. It's in Tennessee again, I'm assuming.
Yes, it's in Tennessee. It's at the Montgomery Bell Park. They're going to have a lot of cops defending them and whatnot. I think what we're going to have to do to really cause this conference grief. I mean, the conference is on, and it's been going on annually. I think what we're going to have to do is just basically cause grief to everybody that has gone to that conference and make sure that it's detrimental to their future. Should they ever be seen at this thing. And by the way, if you hear about any international folks flying in to participate in this conference, we got to put them on the list so that they are no longer allowed to enter this country to be a part of that. We got to start making calls. We don't want fascism imported. Sorry. And if you don't like it, you must be a fascist too. I don't care. So we basically should just call. We basically need to start calling our state departments and say, "Hey, look, we got some people who are coming into this country trying to ratchet up animosity and division amongst us. They themselves are criminals in their own countries." Because that's
more than likely, yes,
because that's the case in a couple of them,
right?
And we don't need them here,
right?
Don't let them in. So that should be the real. If people want us to protect our borders, okay. We'll do it.
Right. Wait, they only want to protect the borders when it comes to brown immigrants. Come on, you know this, Daryle. They're such hypocrites, these guys. Like, they don't apply any rule universally. And they think that they're so transparent when we can all see exactly who they are.
I mean, they think that the rules should be different for themselves. I mean, that's one of the
100%. 100%.
I can't get over how people are trying to say that the guy who threatened to kill Joe Biden in Utah, people are basically saying that, oh, well, the cops just gunned him down in his sleep. Okay, where have we heard that one before?
I'm going to go with the Panthers in Chicago.
Oh, no, I was thinking more on the lines of Breonna Taylor.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was reaching way far back
because when you talk about that's what happened to Breonna Taylor, that's when the semantics come in. No, she was awake. Oh.
Right. Then because they're basing it
first.
Yeah, they're basing it on something other than universal application of law. I wonder what that could be.
Yeah. I wonder how the right feels about those cops, because you also notice when they know that they're wrong and they just need to shut up, because I don't hear too many on the right trying to defend the cops that in Mississippi that got, I think by now, convicted and for assaulting 2 black men there.
Right.
So, I mean, they know they want the rules to be different for them than they are for us.
I agree.
But they have to recognize you can't have it that way sometimes.
No, I think, Daryle, at base, they see law enforcement as a group that's there to enforce their belief system,
They're
not as a group
they're
that's
shock troops.
right, not a group that's supposed to apply law universally. So the reason the left wants to reform the police is for a whole different set of reasons than the right is saying defund FBI and is calling them Antifa. It's just not the same.
Yeah, we're not just out there trying to call attention to the police because we don't want them to come after us because of whatever beliefs we hold or whatever,
Right.
what have you. We just want them
to stop being racist jackasses.
Well, more to the point, however, they're supposed to be protecting us. We're supposed to be able to rely on the police. If we cannot rely on the police, much like this political process that is a mess right now, we need to find something else.
Yeah, I feel you.
That nonsense.
Yep.
If we simply cannot do that, and but they, on the other hand, are shocked that the police will come after them. I remember there was a group back in the day called Free Republic. That was the precursor to MAGA.
Yeah.
Back in the late
2010.
90s.
Way earlier.
Earlier, 2000s and early 90s, 2000s. And I remember when they would come out to protest, one of their signs was "No tear gas necessary. We're conservatives." Oops. No. How many cops were on the beat, saw that sign, and then 20 years later saw those same people trying to beat them up on January 6th?
Right. I've said this before, I'll say it again. If January 6th had been done by anti-fascists or BLM activists, there would have been live rounds.
Oh, no, there would have been live rounds and no one would have been allowed to go home.
Exactly.
That's the one thing about January 6th that I can't get over. It's like,
I know.
You actually let these knuckleheads go home and they killed one of you bastards?
It's insane.
Shoot, I mean,
what happened in that hall?
They say that there was too many of them to control. I said, yeah, right. When we were protesting in DC, we get wrapped up in orange netting.
Right.
Saying that we're under arrest. We probably weren't even protesting, and all of a sudden the whole storm of police will just chase us out of Lafayette Park.
Exactly.
We don't have to do a thing. And
there's definitely a bias that still exists. I think January 6th sort of has been a bit of a turning point, at least for federal law enforcement, not local police per se. A lot of those guys were involved in January 6th, let's be honest. But we're now seeing, with frequency, the FBI basically saying the biggest threat to democracy are right-wing extremists. And that's not something we've seen. It's quiet part, while still keeping a tab on BLM. But I think, I don't know. I think that it's shifting a little bit. Like, if you look at the data, for every one left-winger that commits some act of violence, whether it's hitting somebody at a protest, whatever not, there's like 150 right-wing examples for that one. I mean, it's just not even close in comparison if you look at the data. Not even fucking close. Yet resources were never applied to match that. You know what I'm saying?
No, and it goes back to what you were talking about before, how the right feels that the police are essentially their shock troops. There's something to that.
There is something to that. Exactly. That's
so
the
whenever
problem.
they do get jammed up,
it's a shock.
It's a shock to them. I mean, I'm quite sure it was a shock to them.
It's a shock to me too.
It's a shock to all of us. It's a shock to all of us. I mean, we'll take it. We'll take it. We won't trust it, but we'll take it. That's why whenever you see us cheering on cops taking them down left and right, it's not because we love the police. We just love that it's not our asses getting kicked this time, and the asses that deserve to be kicked are getting kicked. I mean, maybe it's a pretty good show on their part, but we'll take it.
Yeah,
we'll take it.
100%.
We'll use it.
All right, speaking of Charlottesville, we've been talking about that a little bit. Let's talk about that a little bit more. So we are now at the 6th anniversary of Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. This was obviously, for folks that don't know, big white supremacist neo-Nazi rally where Heather Heyer was killed. You had, every freaking Nazi group under the sun was there participating. Daryle, you were there counter-protesting. I wanted to pull up the Ignite the Right website. This was a group that was started last year that is basically trying to research the remaining identities of some of the Nazis that were involved in some of the violence there. So they formed this website last year. So I wanted to pull this up. This is their 1 year in review post that they put out this morning. A year in review, coalition of anti-fascists ensure that participants of the deadly Unite the Right rally are still being identified. This week marks the 6th anniversary of Unite the Right, the deadly white supremacist rally that was held in Charlottesville, Virginia in the summer of 2017. This week also marks the 1 year anniversary of Ignite the Right, a project spearheaded by a coalition of anti-fascist researchers intent on making sure every last participant is publicly identified and held accountable. While many participants in the violent white supremacist rally had been identified by various anti-fascist collectives and volunteers by the time Ignite the Right launched last year, there were still hundreds who had never been named. Another issue was the identities of those who had previously been exposed that were scattered across multiple websites and social media platforms. Those that weren't lost to time or to a Twitter ban, because this is a very real thing. Sometimes you look something up on your search engine and it's from a Twitter that has now been deleted, which is very annoying. So weren't always easy to track down. Ignite the Right works to organize the existing documentation from numerous anti-fascists into a cohesive catalog and continues to research information on new identities. So since launching 1 year ago, this is wild. Ignite the Right has expanded their database from 240 entries to over 600. That's quite an expansion in a 1 year time. So this includes over 200 new identities previously unnamed, Unite the Right participants, bringing the total number of identified participants to 320. And those are just the identities that have been made public. The group has several dozen open files in which participants have been identified, but research is still ongoing. So I think you've been working a little bit on this project, Daryle. What are your thoughts 6 years on? You were there.
Yeah. And you know, I'm going to just say for the record, if we really want to see an end to all of this nonsense, let's stop waiting until after somebody gets killed.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'm just going to say this flat out. I mean, the fact of the matter is we had the tools to shut these characters down well before we lost Heather Heyer, but we kept on playing the whole ignore them routine, and that never works.
Right.
It just,
no, you're right.
It just strengthens them in this day and age.
Right.
Everybody played with these characters with kid gloves for much of my career.
Yeah.
And then they get a president. And less than a year after he gets into office, somebody is dead at a rally. And that has never been the case at any rally that I have gone to prior.
No, right. No, it was insane.
So what happened was, as soon as that happened, all of a sudden, people started doing things that they could have done all along. Stormfront got shut down. The Daily Stormer got shut down. Right. It's like, so it's like watching Wizard of Oz and finding out the ruby slippers could have taken you home all the time.
Yeah, all the whole time, and they didn't. Yeah.
Well, the difference is now is that the ruby slippers are still on our feet. We know they can take us home, but we don't click our heels and get January 6th out of all of this. Yeah. Now they think they're going to go after the LGBTQ plus community,
right? When
they could not have done it before, because we've already settled this 30 years prior, and they're bringing back all the old arguments to try to play against a new generation. Yeah. And they're bringing the Nazis with them.
Yeah, 100%.
The anti-drag crowd, that anti-trans crowd, they hold rallies and they have the Nazis standing right there with them. Yeah. Do we have to wait till somebody dies at one of those things? Do we have to wait till somebody gets killed at one of those things?
And I worry that might happen, Daryle. I've been at some of these things.
Happen.
And the rage of these guys, you see it in their faces, their voices. I have never, even with some of the January 6th insurrectionists that I've interviewed and covered, I have never seen such intense rage than I've seen from some of these anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ folks at these school board meetings. Like, it's scary.
And they tell you that they want to kill.
Oh, 100%.
At those school board meetings.
Yes.
They tell you that all the time. So it's about time we start basically taking them at their word. Freedom House 1984 said, yep, it was their beer hard push. which is a good point, because the beer hall push did not stop the Nazis. Stopping them there did not stop the Nazis. As Robert Evans said back when he brought up the beer hall push, it says they just kept on pushing.
Right.
And pushing.
Right.
So all we got to do is just start pushing back. But we don't, because we start getting lulled into this false sense of security after we push them once. And it's like, no, don't. What happened with January 6th? After Trump lost, everybody was saying, okay, everybody can just ignore them now, let them vent and all of this nonsense. And we just kept on saying, no, don't do that.
Right.
That's why January 6th happened.
Right.
So
I
are we
agree.
going to keep on letting them do things until they actually kill somebody again? Or are we actually going to basically
I'm a big fan of deplatforming. You mentioned,
Me too.
they took Daily Storm or offline, whatever. I'm sorry, but having a First Amendment doesn't mean that these people are guaranteed a large global platform. It just doesn't, nor should it. And a lot of these guys are very much motivated by getting sucked down a rabbit hole of misinformation, of hate speech. They're reading this stuff. It's affecting them. Like, you can go onto TikTok, and I encourage people to try this just to see what I'm talking about. You can go, and within 20 minutes, you're going to be looking at some Nazi adjacent content. And I'm not exaggerating here. So why is that happening? And people that might be susceptible to that messaging, for whatever reason, home life they grew up in, a host of reasons, they get sucked into that. And the next thing you know, they're part of this, hate group.
Mm-hmm. And I think basically what we do in that regard, we don't have to boycott necessarily. We just have to make sure that our voices and the way they always say the best way to fight hate speech is with more speech. Of course, every time you use that more speech, that's when they come around and say, maybe you should just ignore that. I think basically take solace in this. It's all they got at this point, because they can't be IRL. They can't be out there talking the trash that they're saying online and in this comment section, incidentally. And
we get some trolls.
No. I'm used to the trolls, but you know what I don't have to worry about? Them stepping to me in real life. They're not getting in my face. This is all they got. You know why Jason Aldean said try that in a small town? Because we chased them out of every other town. So now they're basically saying, yeah, you can kick our ass out there, but come here. Pretty soon it's going to be like, get off my lawn.
Get off.
That's all I got left. Try that.
I know. Here's a thought. Here's a thought to Jason and whoever else feels this way. Maybe you should just re-examine your viewpoint. Have you considered that maybe your viewpoint is not only exhausting, but totally wrong? And that it's a much better place to be and to just not go around hating people?
Well, see, here's my thing. When you're talking about small towns also, and by the way, Ferguson population 18,000 plus. We tried it in a small town.
Yeah.
When you're talking about small towns, you tend to forget that the people that you're fighting are actually from those small towns. My town, Franklin Township, population 60,000 plus. So one of the things, and when you're talking about the kinds of towns that he is referring to, the reason why they're small is because they chase a lot of people out.
Right.
And they come to these areas where they can be accepted. And they turn out to be in big cities, the urban areas, and they flourish and they grow and they gain some sort of strength. Yeah. And people see that. There's another song called Rear View Town that they have on it's a country song, and the lyrics go, it ain't nothing but it's like, wipe the footprints off my dash, tore up those sun-faded photographs, threw them in the wind, y'all can have them back, I'm out of here. Stuck my middle finger up in the sky, flipped off that y'all come back sign. Looked in the mirror one last time and watched it disappear. Ain't nothing but a rear view town, broken hearts and rusted plows, roots ripped right up out the ground, never thought I'd ever leave it. Oh, it ain't nothing but it used to be. Population minus me. On the other side of that dust cloud, ain't nothing but a rear view town. The funny part, guess who sang it?
I don't know. I can't even guess.
Jason Aldean.
Oh.
Jason Aldean sang that. It was a hit for him a couple of years back. And it was written by some of the same people who wrote Try That in a Small Town.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to look at Try That in a Small Town. They're catering to that crowd that thinks they can kick our ass. And the bottom line is they never have.
No.
They never have.
And the reality
that past week can show that.
Exactly. And Daryle, the reality is most Americans at this point don't agree with them at all. Even the ones that are like maybe lukewarm on the fence or whatever, they don't agree with them. This is a dying thought pattern, which is good. But the bad news of that is I feel like this is also sort of their death rattle, which is why we're seeing there is an increase. There is an increase happening. It's just a minute one, but they are very loud. They're very vocal.
It goes back to what I would say, what I said earlier. They used to run this country. Now they're daring you to come to their small town, right? Because they don't have the rest of the country anymore. Yeah, and they're going to lose that small town too.
Yeah, I agree.
It's weird to see a black and a Jewish senator in Georgia. You know, I mean,
right? That's true.
It's eventually. I mean, come on, they're trying to hole up in Florida and in Idaho.
Tennessee.
Freaking Tennessee's putting out the welcome mat.
Right.
But that's as good as it gets for now.
I agree. I wanted to switch gears now and talk about any closing thoughts though on Charlottesville and what's going on here. So obviously that work is continuing. I know, they've exposed this last year. I should mention this, police officer, professor, people from all walks of life.
Try that in a small car. Yeah. I'm just looking at the comments.
Daryle, you're the best.
Try that in a small car. No, that's somebody in the comments.
That's funny. All right. So American Renaissance, we just talked about, is happening this weekend. I wanted to talk about the Volk movement, this German word for folk. So folkish. This might be a weird term for some folks. I think I've maybe brought this up once or twice in passing, but I've never really had a deep conversation about the folk movement. This is pagan neo-Nazism, basically, in a nutshell. There's also True Folk Assembly, which is probably the biggest organization from this. They originated in Brownsville, California, which is super north of Sacramento. They've done fundraising now. They're expanding. They've opened a place in Tennessee, right? A Hof. They call them Hofs. Everything is borrowed from Scandinavian folklore, which is, as a Swede, is very fucking annoying and pisses me off, but is what it is. But they, they're pagan neo-Nazis. So we've talked about mainly on the show Christian and Catholic Nazis, because that's also a big growing thing recently with Christian nationalism. But this is still very much a part of the conversation. So these are folks that believe, and in fact, let us pull up their website, Colin, so folks can see what we're talking about. It's runestone, so that gives you an idea of runes, right? So this is also True Folk Assembly's welcome website. You'll see a lot of conversations there about pre-Christian spirituality of Europe. More specifically is the religion by which the ethnic European folk, which is exactly what that means, white people, traditionally related to the divine and to the world around them. Further on, you'll see they'll actually just call it what it is, Aryan religion. So scrolling down, you'll see all of this. I wanted to point out that is the McNullans, who is one of the founders there on the right, Stephen McNullan. So they're worshiping many gods, paganism from Scandinavia, and they're basically saying this is the true white Aryan religion. I wanted to show folks too, because this is crazy. They have a YouTube channel, because of course they do. And not only do they have a YouTube channel, they have advertising on it. I was going through some of the videos earlier, Daryle, and you can see within these videos neo-Nazi signs like the Black Sun. A lot of it's trying to make this look like pagan. Like this is a midsummer video. So midsummer is a Swedish holiday, probably the biggest Swedish holiday. It happens on the solstice in summer. It's a day that is daylight all day long. So it's just a giant party in the countryside. It is absolutely not a white Aryan religion thing at all, but that's what these guys are kind of turn it into. This was up in Brownsville that they had this. So the reason we're talking about them is because for the first time now, one of them is going to be a speaker at American Renaissance. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing that's because they opened the new Hoff there in Tennessee and it's close to them. What are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, you're talking about the founder, Stephen McNally. He's going to be speaking at American Renaissance. It gives you an idea of what kind of people that American Renaissance attracts. I mean, used to be a time when they was holding conferences in Washington, D.C. a generation ago. They basically had folks of the political stripe. They tried to maintain a mainstream presence. They used to be broadcast on C-SPAN, but they were a white supremacist group that wasn't being called one, and they were open to folks in the Jewish community and Jewish speakers who would talk about how bad Black people were. And no one would think anything of it because that was just the thing to do. I mean, the bell curve comes out of all of their nonsense. I mean, and bell curve was an amazing thing.
Another
we're getting into the full-on Nazism.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, now we're getting to the point where American Renaissance is basically just a platform for folks that would have otherwise not been chased out of American Renaissance, but would have otherwise been suppressed just a little bit publicly so that they can advance themselves. Now they don't care. And the reason why they don't care is because, they feel they have some sort of momentum after the White House, after Donald Trump, I should say. But it's not really momentum as it is, I guess, a Hail Mary on the parts of a lot of folks on the right, because they always say that this is their last chance to try to turn this country around, as they would say. If they don't turn this country around now, they'll be lost forever. And to that end, you got folks like American Renaissance saying, we're taking you all in. Let's just see what we can do. And the answer is no, you can't do anything. Remember, you have to hide out in the backwoods of Tennessee to get over it.
Part of what
if they had their conference in Nashville, they would have been chased through the streets.
100%.
Nashville proper. They would have been chased through the streets by Justin Jones.
That's right. 100% by Justin.
by both Justins.
100%. That would have been awesome. I would have been there for that. Let's talk about this a second. You brought up a book called The Bell Curve. I want to explain what that is for folks that don't know. Yeah. So the bell curve that came out, I believe, I want to say 1995, 1996. Was it earlier?
90. Wasn't that
90. Okay. So the bell curve was basically this pseudo-scientific book that said that they were looking at all of this hard data. It was, again, this was race realism, right? It was basically making the case that people were hardwired for IQ and that IQ was related to your race and that there was nothing that can be done to change that. It's immutable. And because of that, then, well, why are we funding programs like Head Start? It's a waste of money. We should just stop doing that and accept that this is what it is, right? So Ernstine and Murray were the two authors of this, I believe at Harvard, if I remember correctly.
My mistake, 1994, by the way.
Okay, 94. All right, so in between both of our guesses. So early 90s, so 1994. I remember this book when it came out. And in fact, I talk a little bit about it in my master's thesis because to me, this was a touch point of modern science still not coming to terms with the fact that, maybe race is just this superficial thing. It has no deep genetic structure that's meaningful in any other way. And we now know that that's true because we've, decoded the human genome, but these guys were holding on to this. And at the time, and this is what's scary, at the time, this wasn't considered any sort of eugenicist or neo-Nazi book at all. It was considered to be scientific because it had data or whatever. Stephen Jay Gould is the author that I mentioned earlier. His book was a response to the bell curve, actually, The Mismeasure of Man. And he went after the hardcore science in it. So Stephen Jay Gould is an evolutionary biologist. He obviously has the chops to go after this book more so than the two authors that wrote it. And he basically destroyed the book. It's a beautiful thing. I highly recommend this book. But anyway, it's wild that we went from that shift to where we are today, where now they're literally letting in the door to neo-Nazis that are saying the JQ is real. So it's where the anti-Semitism and racism are together, right? So the Jewish folks are controlling the black and brown folks to do their bidding, and they're coming after the white folks. I mean, this might sound crazy to some folks, but this is basically the baseline for a lot of the conspiracies and ideas that they put forth at these things. But I would say that very much limits their audience, which is probably a good thing. But I would say that Jared Taylor, who is the guy that started American Renaissance, he sees himself as still a scientist of sorts, at least in the very least an intellectual. And obviously that's not the case.
I'll be fair, he doesn't consider himself, I don't think he considers himself to be a scientist, but I believe he considers himself to be a student of the scientists.
Oh, okay, fair.
Right. I'll be fair in that regard, but because he's a writer. That's his thing. He is a writer. He is a real journalist. So I'll give him that. Having said that, he can really just kick rocks. But,
he can really just kick rocks. Like if you ask him if he's anti-Semitic, he says no. But yet here he is sharing space with individuals that are incredibly anti-Semitic. And I will say this as someone with Jewish heritage. I believe that he invited those people into American Renaissance originally because he thought it gave him cover for his racist ideas. And it, quite frankly, it did. And that's shameful.
Well, this is what I was talking about, how they were suppressed. They were not ejected from American Renaissance back in the day. I mean, back in 2000, when I went to my first American Renaissance conference, I literally ran into David Duke. And David Duke, a couple of years after that, tried to pull the JQ crap on American Renaissance. Michael Hart, a Jewish white supremacist, got pissed off and walked out because he said he sullied the conference. Yeah.
Bro, these are who your people are. It kills me. It's like, so what are you talking about?
He's a trip. Michael Hart.
Michael, you're an idiot. Yeah, he's an idiot. But Stephen Miller, these folks do exist, and it just blows my mind because they're just giving cover to people that want them dead, and I don't know how they.
It's amazing to me. Michael Hart is a guy who will hate on everybody on the planet, but the minute somebody says something about his people, Jewish people, he feels that he should be outraged that somebody would do that. You phony son of a bitch.
Bingo. Nothing. Say no more. You say, that's the best way to describe it. All right. Colin, can you pull up the Southern Poverty Law Center article on New Volkisch? This is New Folkism. Folk. It's really sad that they use folk because I like to use the word, folks instead of people, but and then you got this stuff going. All right, top takeaways. I wanted to bring this up because it talks about how this particular AFU movement is growing. From 2021 to 2022, the number of active neo-Volkisch hate groups increased from 38 in 2022 to 38 from 32 in 2021. The Asatru Folk Assembly, AFA, the largest new Volkisch group in the country, accounted for all of this increase, rising to 31 from 24. This is likely due to the opening of a new Hof in White Springs, Florida, or a meeting place called Nordshof in August of 2022. In 2022, neo-Volkisch adherents focused on issues that animated the broader American right, including critical race theory and anti-COVID-19 vaccine conspiracy theories. As much of neo-Volkisch ideology centers on misplaced fears about the replacement of white people, many hate groups focused on homeschooling. This is the scary part. In 2022, this is particularly true with the AFA because they have absolutely started a homeschooling program. As a means to disrupt the flow of accurate educational information about the history of racism and iterations of structural oppression in the United States. Many adherents to the neo-Volkisch ideology also latched onto conspiracy theories about safety, inoculation, measures against the COVID-19 pandemic, being aimed at controlling and ultimately suppressing white people. Like other hate group members, neo-Volkisch adherents opportunistically harness conspiracy theories to avoid contributing to an equitable, multiracial democracy. And we've talked about this. COVID-19 vaccines, anti-vaxxers, this was used as a wedge issue to sort of red pill and bring people into these extremist movements. In September 2022, the AFA opened the Asatru Academy homeschool curriculum, beginning with kindergarten. By the end of the 22-23 school year, ordained clergyman or Gothi, Rob Stam, the headmaster of the Asatruk Academy, stated that it would have grades K through 3 ready for homeschooling curriculum with plans to develop a complete K through 12 program. All right. We get enough of that. I mean, it reminds me of Moms for Liberty using that Adolf Hitler quote about if you have the youth, you have the future. I mean, that's exactly what these folks believe, right? They want to, we did an episode on the Nazi homeschooling that was going on the Telegram channel. And some of that I know some of that programs, not the programs, the worksheets and whatnot that they were using and showing the kids came from the AFA. And it was literal like swastika, connect the dots and whatnot. Some scary stuff.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, are we surprised at this?
No.
I mean, I don't
not
even
surprised.
get scared of this stuff anymore. I mean, it's just basically, the only thing that you know to do is just, be prepared for it and figure out how to handle it when it comes. Because,
right.
I mean, you can definitely counter it.
Yes, definitely counter it. Also, folks, we are live. So if you have questions for Daryle, go ahead and drop us a super chat. We will get to those towards the end of the show. And make sure you like and share the stream. That helps Status Coup. And if you're not a member, please consider becoming a member. Your membership is what funds our journalism. We have Lou is going back to East Palestine next week, in fact, to do some follow-on reporting of what's going on there. So we'll be funding that trip. Yeah, we've been spending some time there. I was just in Atlanta as well. So, this stuff costs money. So please consider becoming a member for $5 a month. All right. Paganism versus Catholic Christian identity.
Catholic Christian identity.
Yeah, so we have Nazis on both sides of the spectrum here. Right?
Wait, stop. No. Are we talking about, now, I just want to be sure here. When you say Catholic Christian identity, are you talking about Catholics who are adopting the Christian identity religion? Or is just
no, like the order, you mean? Like the order? No,
yeah.
Okay, that's a good question. No, I mean, it could be. Yes, they're part of that group.
I hope not. It doesn't work.
No, I mean, so for folks that don't know what we're talking about, we should probably explain that. So this was a group that actually believed that Jesus Christ, because if you're a Nazi and you're a Christian or a Catholic, you have to sort of come to terms with the fact that Jesus Christ was a Jew. Or you don't. You just decide that he's from Satan and that he was never a Jew. So that's that group. Putting them aside, though, like I'm talking about guys like Reupers, like Nick Fuentes, Christian nationalists that partake in Nazi ideology, but also are hyper religious. Some of the Rise Above movement guys, you see them having a lot of Catholicism, mixed in with their racist beliefs. So I feel like it's really wild to me how you've got, AFA groups like that are very much into their pagan religion and embrace the Nazi. And then you have the folks that are super religious and also do the same thing. Do these groups ever get together over a common interest and that's their racist belief system or no?
Yes. Yes. That's really ultimately that's what they will do.
Is that's what supersedes both of these?
Yeah. I mean, at least publicly, they are going to get into the fights, ideological fights, every now and again. But overall, you're going to see them basically unite around this. Hell, Charlottesville was called "Unite the Right" in the first place. So, right.
And you had groups from both there. You're right. That's definitely the truth.
Yeah, so let's not be surprised about them getting together. I mean, and don't be surprised if Nazis consider themselves to be Christians.
Right, because a lot of them do. That's the thing. A lot of them do, and it's so funny. I just see these two succinctly different religious, that should be at loggerheads, but they have this Nazi ideology that ties them together.
All I gotta say is remember Father Charles Coughlin. Remember that. Look him up.
He's the Catholic Nazi guy, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I mean,
he probably wouldn't have considered himself to be a Nazi, but hey, here we are.
But a lot of Nazis don't consider themselves to be Nazis. I mean, if you have blood and soil or blood in soil or blood in honor or any of those iterations tattooed across your chest, you're probably a Nazi. If you're doing Sig Heils, you're probably a Nazi.
Hey,
if you're holding up a flag with the black sun.
Also got to remember that a lot of folks talk like that, try to play both sides there, because they know in this day and age they'll get in trouble for being identified as a Nazi or as a racist in general. That's how come they do all these silly little tap dancing saying that we're not this, we're not that, but you are some kind of nonsense. It's like, no, man.
No, you are. And then if you get into their private chats and they think nobody's listening that shouldn't be in there, then you see it firsthand. I mean, I've seen like some of these Proud Boy chats where they're private, the private ones, and they absolutely they're letting it all out.
There's some Telegram chats.
That's what I'm talking about. Telegram. Yeah.
There's some Telegram chats where they would go off. I mean, I saw one going after Jon Stewart. Hell, I had to actually ask. I mean, speaking of Moms for Liberty, there's a Moms for Liberty chat that keeps on Telegram that keeps on hyping up Patriot Front and the National Justice Party, which Patriot Front literally is a front for.
Right.
And I had to hit up Moms for Liberty. They said, you guys are about this, and the founder Tina-Desiree actually had to email us back and say, no, this is not us, and all this. Is like, okay.
Well, I mean, do they not know who Patriot Front is? I mean,
I don't care whether they do or didn't, but fact of the matter is I wanted to just make sure that I want to get their thing on the record. And they said that isn't our Telegram account. We don't have a Telegram account.
Oh, they're saying somebody's using their name?
Whatever.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. I mean, that could be true, or they could just be lying.
Hey, I'm just going by what they say. I didn't say whether or not I believed it. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, after all the other shit that they've done, how dare they say that they're Nazis?
I know, right?
I mean, come on. They quoted Hitler in one of their newsletters.
Exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, you can't go anywhere else but up from there. All right. So
I know. And then when they got in trouble for it, they were like, they had the most ridiculous excuses. It's like, yeah, they deleted and apologized and then had excuses.
Had excuses. They tried to say, yeah, we were talking about the Democrats. No, you were not talking about the Democrats.
No, yeah, no, you did. Yeah, if you were, you would have had an article surrounding the quote. It was just the quote and nothing more.
Yeah, exactly.
This is really silly stuff. All right, so right-wing insanity roundup. This is where we look at some breaking clips from the week and talk about them. I wanted to talk about this first one from Anna Perez for a couple of reasons. She's calling for a revolution, but also based on some crazy ideas. Let's play this clip and we'll talk about it.
Okay. I'm going to cue this up real nicely for the Right-Wing Watch and Patriot Takes and all those people that I'm sure are going to clip what I'm about to say and put it out there. I don't effing care what they think anymore. Here's the reality. The revolution was an insurrection. What else would it be? And what happened is people stood up against the tyrants that were basically controlling their every move. You had all of these intolerable acts. They were taxed to death over tea, over a slew of other things. They couldn't trade freely. Okay, they were living under absolute tyranny. And what did they decide to do? They decided to take up arms against the government. They formed militias in their communities, and they took up arms against the most powerful military in the world. Are we not living under very similar circumstances here in America? Does this not call for the same, if not a similar response to that situation? Why else would we have a Second Amendment? They specifically put the Second Amendment in there because we didn't want to deal with, we didn't ever want to have to come to this point, to be quite honest. I'm not calling for violence. I'm not a violent person. What I'm calling for is for people to realize that there is a Second Amendment for a reason.
You're not calling for violence, but you keep on bringing up the Second Amendment. Okay, come on now. You keep on talking about revolution was an insurrection. I mean, there is nothing that she said
that makes sense.
The violence. It's not like you said, now we should have a cup of tea and among friends and discuss this. No, she did not do that.
She did not do that.
She is right where we are up against a tyrannical government. That's true, but she is actually a part of the how should I say, of the elite squad, of that elite hierarchy that is trying to maintain that particular force that we are supposed to be fighting. You know who's really fighting against that government intrusion, against that, for lack of a better term, monarchy of sorts of the latter day? We are.
Right.
We are.
Right.
We're the ones who are broke because of them. We're the ones getting shot by cops. Remember, they get amazed that it happens to them.
I know.
Because it's not supposed to happen to them. It's supposed to happen to us. So when you see what happened in the summer of 2020, that was an insurrection. All right. That was a revolution. But we pulled back because we also knew that we did not want to destroy the things that we had worked for.
Right.
We did, and we were mad because our brothers and sisters and children were getting shot dead in the damn streets for over 100 years by an entity that was supposed to be protecting us. What they did on January 6th was because they lost the election.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. They lost an election, and all of a sudden it's taxation without representation. Come on, Anna. It's not similar. It's just not similar.
And that's why she's and bear in mind, Anna, the folks in the revolution. I mean, hey, we can talk all day long about the American Revolution and who was actually the good guys and the bad guys, and that will be here forever. But they couldn't show their faces the way you could. Remember that.
Right. No, you're not wrong. Not wrong. All right.
If he was an actual insurrectionist.
Exactly. But that's that. You know, do you notice, Daryle, like all of these guys are perpetual victims no matter what?
oh yeah, it's amazing because they always complained for years. They complained about the culture of victimization, and now they're the biggest practitioners of it. It kills
100%. It kills me. All right. I want to play this clip about Vivek, who is running for the GOP primary.
Ramaswamy? Okay.
Yes. Because he's getting flack now from the Christian nationalists. This isn't the only clip I found of this. There was a bunch of them, but I picked this one for a host of reasons that we'll talk about in a second. But he's now getting attacked by the Christian nationalists because he's Hindu.
Satan is the author of confusion. And we know that. And right now, the battle is coming for the presidential nomination. And there's a man who is gaining traction right now as the presidential nominee, and his name is Vivek Ramaswamy, and he is Hindu. And those who are Hindu believe in many gods. And he speaks well, and he is very charismatic, and he says the right things. He says so many right things. Sometimes I'm like, maybe he is the right guy. But he's not. Because our God will not be mocked. And you know what? You know who he reminds me of sometimes? Barack Obama. Because he is charismatic. He says all the right things. Do not be fooled, friends. Do not be fooled. Do not be a victim of Satan's confusion right now. This is an important time for us to have clarity of mind as we are going into an election cycle. So please discern. Please use discernment right now, because God hates those who are willing to put up idols over him, and he will not be mocked.
Amen. So what did she say about all those people that have Trump walking in front of Jesus Christ, those paintings that they put up? Huh?
Right,
think about that.
right.
You know, it's interesting because I was actually having a conversation with one of the people that I work with, and I was pointing out, we've been saying for a while, you know, Trump is not going to even make the primaries. I don't think he's going to get past the primaries next year. And but that means who is going to take their place, who's going to be there on top. We will get an idea after the Republican debates who they're going to be really going for. I don't think Trump's going to appear at those debates. I don't think it's going to be Ron DeSantis because Ron DeSantis is radioactive. And I have been saying for a while, that it will be Tim Scott.
Okay.
Because Tim Scott, they need. She's talked about Ramaswamy would be their Barack Obama. No, Tim Scott reminds her of Barack Obama, but actually, Tim Scott will be their Barack Obama. See, the Republicans need to start taking it down a notch. Otherwise, they'll never see another winning election again.
That's true.
Tim Scott is good for that. Tim Scott is really good for that. But it was Ramaswamy that they're talking a lot more about. He's the one that that's been the center of attention for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
My friend pointed out there's no way that Ramaswamy will win the election because those boomers out there who are still a huge part of the Republican Party are not going to vote for him. But they will vote for Tim Scott. Because Tim Scott.
I think that's fair analysis.
Yeah. So what you just showed speaks to exactly what she was saying. Speaks exactly what my friend was saying. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it wouldn't honestly.
I gotta show her this video.
Okay, yeah, I'll send you a link to it. It wouldn't surprise me also because I think a lot of boomers in their brains probably conflate Hindu and Muslim, even though they're not even remotely the same.
Yep, I've seen that. And that's and considering what the partition was all about,
I know.
You're really gonna get your behinds kicked. You play that game.
I mean, to be fair, we've seen it, right? I mean, it sounds crazy, but I have seen this conflation made. Like every brown Eastern religion is the same one, and it's Muslim, and it's bad. That's what their brains do.
And I would say, incidentally, because I just saw a comment about how Tim Scott is barely scratching 5%. Don't go by what's going on right now.
It's early. Things could change.
Let things start ratcheting it up, and let's see where we go from. Joe Biden would not be president right now if we was going.
He was less than 5%. You're correct. I mean, he wasn't even. I was in Iowa covering the caucus, and he wasn't even anywhere to be seen. It wasn't until the machinations of the party taking Bernie out after the California primary day that changed.
I mean, it irked me to begin with that whole election of 2020 because it was just like we had all these. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I get angry about the Democratic Party. You had all these potential candidates, whether I like them or not is another thing. But they were not cut from the same cloth that we always cut from. Right. So what did the Democratic Party end up doing? Find a way to get the old white guy up there. And that is really one of the biggest insults I think the Democratic Party ever played.
I agree. And they're going to pay for that in some way. I believe this because they hadn't quite healed from the 2016 problems that they had created within.
Not yet, because unfortunately, people still look at the Democratic Party as being their only option, to which I also tell those third party crowd, we got to stop only hearing from you. And this is to the third parties out there. You got to step up the games. Stop being paper tigers. We cannot just hear from you every 4 years. Right. It's a little rough to try to come to the defense of third parties and independent candidates when we only hear from you when it's time to vote. You got to start showing what you got outside of the political process. Even you got to start showing what you can do and how you can
and actually
serve the public.
It'd be great to see.
Start showing people how you're going to do that, or just simply produce results. Otherwise, we're going to keep on having these problems with the Democrats scaring people into voting for them. So show them that you're worth a damn. It's time.
Yeah, I mean, Daryle, it'd be great if they spent more time running for local offices too. Here in California, we have we do have that happening with Independents and Green Party because we have a semi-open primary system here. But I think in other states it doesn't really happen that often. So you're right. All of a sudden,
it's time. It's time. Come on now.
Yeah.
We got people running for school boards that should not be running for school boards.
Oh yeah.
Why aren't
that is true? We have some some crazy.
It'd be nice to have people on the school boards that actually give a shit about our kids.
Yeah.
Instead about their agenda, you know.
I agree. I mean, Proud Boys, those people. We have all kinds of extremists trying to take these school board positions.
Who are often not from the community that they're trying to run for.
That's right. That's right. All right. I have one more clip I want to play, and then we're going to get to the super chats. Janet Porter and Ohio issue 1. This was a recent Ohio issue that went down in flames. That was basically, which is good that it went down in flames. It was going after, or making it easier, I guess, to create anti-abortion legislation in the state, but it would have opened the door for others as well. So I wanted to play this clip from Janet Porter. Janet Porter, for folks that don't know who she is a longtime anti-choice activist, I guess you could call her. She's vehemently opposed to abortion and anything related to it. But here she is talking about Ohio issue 1.
Some things are so important that you can't just change them with the one who spends the most money, that wins a simple majority. Let me explain just my history in this. In 1989, I worked to pass the Women's Right to Know law. That's informed consent. It had a 24-hour waiting period so that women will get the information they need. Then, we passed the fetal homicide law. We passed parental consent. We passed the heartbeat law, the nation's first ban on partial birth abortion. And what this would do, if we don't protect those laws with this vote by raising the bar, that means come November, if they spend enough blood money, they confuse enough voters, they can undo and wipe out every pro-life law that we have ever passed. Everything I've done in my life in this state, it will be gone like that. And suddenly Ohioans could wake up and they live in the state of California or New York, or now what they've done to Michigan. This is what we're talking about. Protecting every law we've passed and every baby those laws would protect. Protecting children from having their bodies mutilated when they go to the public schools and they're confused about their gender, without parental notice, without parental consent, because it says the state shall not interfere in this.
All I got to say to that is bullshit.
Of all the things that are not happening, that's at the top of the list. I don't know why they insist this is happening. There's not one single example of this ever happening. It's not happening. It's fucking ridiculous.
Met her.
Have you really? Oh, yeah. Do tell.
I mean, I can't recall, but I mean, I remember being at an event where she was speaking because at the time, I was infiltrating anti-choice groups.
Okay.
And it's so funny looking back at the time because you saw groups. I ran into a cell of the Army of God. The Army of God believed in killing abortion providers and homosexuals. I was also, but the more benign group that I infiltrated was part of a church that was pre-Vatican II. That was about pre-Vatican II stuff. The pastor that I dealt with was a Father Kevin Lutz, who was on the list. It turns out I found that out a couple of years ago that he's on the list of a couple of pastors that were messing around with young boys. So but I met her at one of these conferences. I think Father Frank Pavone was there at this thing, and she really didn't impress me. She just looked like your typical anti-choicer, because I crash these things all the time.
Right.
But hey, it's unfortunately for the anti-choicers out there, people don't like it when you tell them how to live their lives, and and that especially how their bodies are going to be. I mean, this is another thing that was settled. You are not going to force people into going your way when we have made it clear we wasn't. You talk about you're fighting for freedom. You're talking about You're talking about making society free for everybody, and yet you don't.
Right.
And people recognize that. And
Exactly.
as right wing as Ohio has gotten over the past few years,
Yeah.
the Ohio that I lived in is not that. All the Ohio that I lived in wants is to just be able to maintain enough so that their families can be raised, so that they can have decent living, and all Ohioans are looking for that. All Ohioans want to see that. So when you threaten it, what BS laws that can just uproot what Ohio has been for centuries,
Right.
for decades, they're going to feel away. And by the way, honestly, it's not just Ohio. We just saw what happened to folks on the stripe in Kansas too.
Right.
So 94. Good grief, what's wrong with me today? 2024 is going to be a nasty little animal.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I can't wait to see what happens. But this is another example of where we have to make sure that their feet is put to the fire, because the Democrats are already prattling on about how they're going to lose the Senate. They're going to get the House back, but they're going to lose the Senate. And it's like, come on, y'all. You're already telling us you're not going to try. You're already telling us.
I know. They've given up on so many of the small state legislative bodies too, which is really problematic in so many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I add that to the list of things that I get annoyed with when it comes to Democrats. I mean, fact of the matter is, last year there's a whole bunch of races in the House when they were saying that they wasn't going to keep the House, that they could have won. George Santos should not be in Congress. They could have investigated him and found out all his problems. Right. They didn't.
They chose not to. Yeah,
that happened.
Yeah,
and now they want to say we're going to raise money to beat people like George Santos. We already gave you the vote.
I know. It's so frustrating, Daryle. It's very frustrating. It's half the time you feel like you don't have an opposition party to this crazy, or they're part of the crazy. I mean, I often say right-wing insanity isn't just for Republicans or for those to the right of the Republicans. It can be Democrats too. All right, so let's do super chats. Also, as Colin's pulling up the super chats, I do want to mention that One People's Project, which is your nonprofit organization, you're doing a fundraiser right now where you're selling a T-shirt, I believe.
Well, Antifa International has usually this T-shirt of the month thing where they hype up, where they try to raise money for various organizations, various anti-fascist organizations around the globe. We're August, and this is similar. This is the shirt of sorts.
Oh, nice! There it is. Okay.
Antifa. The Antifa International has a different shirt. That's the shirt right there.
There it is.
And
good night, white. Good night, white pride. That's great.
Yes, and I wanted to bring it up in particular because of the runes. And I'll just tell you flat out, I'm just going to read this from our website.
Wait, hang on. Runes, I love that you put runes up there. That's awesome.
Well, basically, the runes say, and I can't pronounce it, good night hivastot, which is just a really literal translation of good night, white pride. The person who designed this ran it by a native Icelandic speaker to make sure it made sense. Great. The style of the runes is roughly the 800-900 AD, so it's Viking age, Norseman age. It's different from the runes that Fash used, which were long dead before they were Vikings. Fash just doesn't know jack shit about their heritage. And this image. The image on it, this is what he told me.
It's probably true. I believe it.
And the image comes from a big carved stone monument in Gotland, Sweden. So that's where, and you can find, and I just want to make sure that, we definitely checked to make sure that the runes actually say good night, white pride. So go to this website right here, and you can pick up one if
Bonfire.
It will do us a solid. That's basically what I want to say about that.
Right on, right on. All right, thanks for sharing that. I love the runes. That's great. Colin, let's get to our super chats. what we got there? Okay, Rick Griffin. Thank you, Rick Griffin. You just joined and became a member. Bravo. We appreciate that, Rick. Your membership is what funds our journalism. And like I mentioned earlier, we are sending not Colin. Sorry, I don't know. Colin might be going actually with Lou back to East Palestine to do some follow-up reporting on the situation there. So make sure you guys tune in next week to get that. Emily Sigmund, us white people have come up with so many different niches and hobby groups within Nazism. It's ridiculous. It's yeah, it's so true. I just have to laugh because it is true. Like Nazi hobby groups. Here we can have, your underwater basket weaving Nazi group for women. Oh, that's awesome. What else we got, Colin?
See their cookbooks.
I never. It's probably
yes,
terrible.
I do have one of them around here.
That's a strong one. Circumcision is child mutilation in the name of religion. Wow.
I gotta tell you, I always looked at. It's only until recently that people have really started to talk about circumcision. No one really said had ever asked, was this circumcision really necessary? Should we do it? People say that it keeps things cleaner or what have you. I mean, maybe that can be an argument. Maybe that can be something we can discuss.
I do know that there is a lower rate of STD transmission. I don't know but that's not why people get circumcised.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's why I am. I know TMI, but it's kind of like I think that I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with being uncircumcised. I mean, go for it. I mean,
yeah, I don't either. Either way, I don't have an opinion.
I honestly never thought about it. I think that's the thing that a lot of people at large. I mean, we don't really think about it. And if folks don't think it's necessary for them to circumcise their sons or when they're born, don't. I mean, I don't think their lives will be any less productive if they are uncircumcised. So,
indeed. Chris Garrett, I see, just dropped a super chat in. Chris is the OG Status Coup member. That is OG. He was one of our first. Loving Right-Wing Insanity Fridays. Thank you, Chris. We're always happy to see you in the chat. You're a great moderator, too. So Right-Wing Insanity Fridays are like the awesomest, right? We have great guests. We talk about stuff that you don't hear every other day of the week. It's the one day of the week that we do devote discussion to what's going on. And not just right-wing extremism. Obviously, we focused on that today, but also within, just basic Republican Party politics and often sometimes on the Democratic side. I think RFK Jr. is a prime example of that. So shout out to Daryle Lamont Jenkins. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a while since we've had you on the show, and I know our audience loves you. What else you got going on? Anything you want to promote? Your Instagram, I think, is where I'm not on Twitter anymore either. It just became too.
Well, I am on Twitter, but I think it's about time because if people want to try to get a hold of me, you never know what's going to happen over at that place.
Right. I haven't deleted my account, but I'm just not spending
I still talk.
I'm
still there.
Okay.
If you want to find me there, I'm Daryle Lamont Jenkins. But really, right now, I'm on Threads. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Spoutable, but no one cares yet. When Twitter actually, unfortunately, right now, Twitter has been the most, the easiest thing for people to just gravitate towards. But thankfully, Elon Musk is
he's ruined it. So God, it's become unusable. Yeah, I just I can't even.
Whatever happens with that platform, I don't want people to get caught up in it. You can find me on Instagram at Daryle Lamont Jenkins, which is also the same handle I use on Twitter. You can find me on TikTok, Notorious DOJ. By the way, 50th anniversary of hip hop is today.
Oh, that's right. I was going to mention that at the start of the show, and I forgot. That is,
Notorious DOJ reminded me. That is something I put on Twitter and on Instagram, incidentally.
That's
I did
wild.
Put this on Instagram.
50 years,
because 15 years late, August 11th, 1975, Kool Herc had the party that basically ushered
In Brooklyn, right?
In Bronx.
Oh, the Bronx. That's
Bronx!
right. Oh shit.
Never
right.
say Brooklyn. Oh, do not. You're gonna have to edit that out. You're gonna have to edit that out quickly. Whoa, baby. You do not. Oh.
That was a different universe in New York. You're right.
Brooklyn.
Uh-oh, I'm fired.
Yeah, I'll pray for you. but seriously though, it's like 15 years later, it was like the concert that changed my life, and it was like it was a hellified show. I was at Hampton Coliseum in Hampton, Virginia. I was in the Air Force at the time, which meant I was a cop, and I went to go see the following. It was Stetsasonic. Actually, Daddy-O from Stetsasonic, I was serving with his brother.
Wow.
So
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 cool.
they opened up. It was called the Run House Tour because it was Run DMC's concert. It was they were the headliners.
Wow.
And it was their tour. But they had a whole bunch of hip-hop artists coming along with them. So they had Stetsasonic, then followed by EPMD, then followed by Public Enemy that nobody knew yet.
No, right. That was early on.
Everybody just went nuts once they hit that stage. Changed my entire outlook on what I was doing. I eventually got kicked out of the military because of this concert. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and then Run DMC. Brothers and sisters, I am here to tell you.
Run DMC was one of the very first vinyl records I purchased.
Mine was Woman in Love by Barbra Streisand. It was a 45. I don't know why. Because but then I quickly changed course. And started my next album was my
Do you see how we just reversed stereotypes?
because after that, I mean, I did get Fantastic Voyage by Lakeside. I bought that, and then I got Master Blaster, which is still my favorite Stevie Wonder song. My first album was The Many Facets of Roger, which was Roger Troutman from Zapp. I mean,
okay, who is this fun gentleman, Daryle Lamont? Okay, Daryle Lamont Jenkins is awesome. So, you are an anti-fascist researcher. You have been holding Nazis to account for 3 decades. Obviously, you do some journalism on the side, Ida Vox.
Well, journalism is what was really basically the basis of what One People's Project does.
Oh, right on. Okay.
Newsline. It's founded by Ida B. Wells. Honestly, I just happen to wear a shirt that has her quote.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. Isn't that the truth? Yes.
Yeah. So I try to maintain her legacy because we basically like to write about the things that people generally did not want to talk about, which was in her case, lynchings.
Right.
But I
want to mention Skin. Your film Skin is on. I watched it on. Was it HBO? Who's running Skin right?
You watched it on Showtime. It was on Showtime.
Showtime. That's right.
You can probably find it on the Showtime website, I guess.
Okay.
But we were talking about Amazon, and I was pretty much slamming Amazon, but
and also the documentary on Charlottesville, which was quite good.
All right, Age of Rage.
Age of Rage
was on Netflix. Netflix took it down.
That's where I saw
they
it.
Thought it was too political.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, that's what I was told. So,
I mean, what was great about that is it sort of juxtaposed. You've had this ongoing beef with Richard Spencer, for years. Yeah, so it kind of sort of follows that beef, and it kind of centers on what happened in Charlottesville from that. But I thought it was a pretty good documentary.
Yeah, it's usually a documentary that that you can find. I mean, people have been
on YouTube
getting
anywhere?
a lot from it. You'll find it on the Nazis put it up on YouTube because they didn't want us raising money with it. But Adam Balaloa actually put it on his Venmo on his
Vimeo
page.
Okay, good.
I gotta find that for him. I wish I had the link, but it's still out there in the ether and all of that.
You can plug it into your search engine; it'll come up.
There's also a new documentary that student from Villanova had done. It's a half hour long. and it's called We Don't Walk in Fear, and that's more about me and who I am and how I grew up. And
is that out yet?
In it. Well, the problem with that one is that, well, it's not even a problem. It's just going through the film festivals and stuff. And basically, what I've also been doing was presenting it at various events. I was in Stone Mountain, Georgia, showing it, while and I don't have the books with me right now. If you talk about things that I've been doing, there is also 2 books that are out. One called No Pasaran. And well, there's a book called We Go Where They Go, and that's the history of anti-racist action.
Okay.
That's put out by PM Press. AK Press has a collection of books called a collection of essays of mine. I'm included in that collection, and it's called No Pass It On, and it's and it was edited and compiled by Shane Burley, a writer from Pacific Northwest. So you got those books to look out for.
Right,
and unfortunately, I don't have either of them near me right now. So I'm mad at myself for not having them on standby to hype up. I'm really lousy at self-promotion.
Yeah. I feel you.
Music and yes, I also like to put on shows every now and again. So you'll see some concerts that we'll put together at some point, I guess. I hope, I pray. So
awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So again, thanks for joining us, Daryle. You're always great to have on the show. I know our audience loves you for good reason, because not only are you informative, you're funny and full of passion. So thanks for joining us today. Everybody else, have a fantastic weekend. It's Friday. Go out, have a cocktail or a nice dinner, see some friends, and enjoy your time off, and stay off the internet for a few days. Recharge your batteries.